All right, so today I will be discussing with you telling your story on TikTok. So, a little introduction for myself. Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Kelly, and on TikTok I go by the name American Dream in Finland. No, I don't think I'm a dreaming American here in Finland. My username comes from a Sanna Marin quote where she said that the American dream can best be achieved in the Nordics as children there are not restricted in their capacity to realize their dreams as they grow up. So I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts, USA. I studied at the University of Hawaii, graduated with a bachelor's in advertising from Suffolk University, and also have a master's degree in marketing from University of Oulu. Professionally, I've worked for the Boston Bruins and Celtics, making t-shirt designs. I've worked in event management, hosting live auctions around the world. And I've worked here in Finland as a digital marketing manager for an IT company, and most recently for Sarah from where I was just part of a 45% staff layoff that took place 5 days ago. My TikTok channel is American Dream in Finland, and it's been active since January 1st, 2021. It started as a challenge to try and come up with one original video idea every day for a year, and I was able to maintain that up until the month of July when vacations got in the way. So currently I have 22,300 followers, 1.6 million likes, and my videos have been viewed over 20 million times. So today we're going to cover a range of topics. I'll start out discussing how I got started with TikTok and how I did so with my account, and how I form my ideas for posting, how I write my scripts, tips when it comes to filming, editing, posting, and following up. And then we'll take a look at some of my analytical data for my best and worst performing videos and some of the key takeaways. So you've decided you want to start a TikTok account, either for your personal business or for yourself. With TikTok, you're going to find that the videos you create need to follow a similar topic or theme. For my channel, I originally started it as a way for me to explain to others why and how I moved to Finland. Prior to my move, I realized I utilized Reddit and forums to gain insight into how to move to a foreign country. So when I first started on TikTok, this information that I had learned and lived out was what I wanted to share first. I began with a video detailing a quick overview of why I came to Finland, and then separate videos explaining how I did it in the process and things I ran into along the way. I never expected the videos to do well. However, my first post got 60,000 views, and the second one got over 100,000. So this initial exposure showed me that people were interested in this topic. Like a thesis topic, it's important to come up with a concept or common theme that your channel's videos will follow. I'll show some metrics later on about what happens when you post a video that doesn't follow your common theme. As you can probably guess, they do not perform well. From what I've heard with TikTok, likely no one can confirm or deny this, as most things with TikTok seem to be based on superstition. But I have heard that the first 5 videos you post on TikTok will dictate what your topic on your channel will be attributed to. So for example, with my initial videos, I was discussing the topic of an American moving to Finland, and thus this is my topic. And when I stray from this topic, my performance suffers greatly. So how do you form ideas around a central topic? Well, this all depends on the topic that you would like to cover. When I initially started my channel, I wrote step-by-step the process of moving to Finland and everything that happened early on, as well as any tips I had on the process. After running out of ideas around this topic, I adapted to include stories from my time visiting and living in Finland, quirks I've noticed, differences between living in the US and Finland, and reviews of things around Finland. So everyone's brainstorming and idea formation process will vary, but for me in particular, I find that I come up with most of my video ideas when I'm trying to fall asleep, out for a walk, in the shower, or when I'm having conversations with people. When I come up with a rough concept, I write down the ideas in the notes section of my iPhone, and later I script and formulate how to bring that idea to life. So thus, this brings us to the scripting phase. This is where the storytelling and how to present your material in the most consumable way possible is completed. When writing your script, it's important to take 2 different angles. You are both the creator and the viewer of this material. So consider, if you are the viewer, what about this topic and the eventual video will make you want to stop scrolling and watch? There's billions of other videos out there. What about this video in particular is going to make the most amount of people want to pay attention to it? Consider your viewer as a fly on the wall to your content. They just walked in on it and they're trying to figure out in the shortest amount of time how this content relates to them. So you want to stand out to your audience with something that quickly pulls them in and is relatable. For me, this means in my script writing, I will dive right into a story. This is how many of my highest performing videos were written. It involves the viewer as if they feel like they're about to become part of the story by hearing it. It's like letting someone in on a secret. So now, yeah, after scripting, we get to the filming stage. And when it comes to filming, really anything goes on TikTok. One of the best parts about the TikTok community is that the audience there does not want to see a polished video. They want to see something that's organic, that has an authentic feel to it, and doesn't feel like there's money or an objective behind it. In the past, there's been TikTokers who have been called out for their inauthenticity and didn't mention a sponsor up front, and they've been publicly berated for it. For my videos, I find that having a linear story that can be told via voiceover is easiest. In these types of videos, I try to use a green screen and act out what happened in sync with the voiceover. So I'll act out some sort of experience or thing that I had happen in my life with a voiceover for the story. This method is performed very well for me, and it just introduces the viewer to like an awkward experience that I may have had. When it comes to filming and editing my videos, I never use the TikTok app, and I highly recommend you do not also. This is because I want to be able to repurpose my video content to other platforms. So if you're filming and posting your video in the TikTok app, the video gets hard encoded with that TikTok watermark. And from my experience, a video with that TikTok watermark performs very poorly on Instagram and YouTube. I've tried cross-posting with other videos from TikTok, and the views always are a dramatic drop from everything else. So I highly recommend doing this if you plan to repurpose your videos in other platforms. So definitely, yeah, do your editing outside of TikTok with a program like InShot or Adobe Premiere. So this brings us, after you're filming, after you're filming, you get to the posting stage. So when it comes to the posting stage, I have a few, let's call them superstitions, because TikTok will always surprise you on things, whether or not you follow best practices. The algorithm is constantly changing, and it's hard to stay in advance of it. I try to limit the amount of hashtags I utilize in posts to 5. And since my videos relate to my topic, I use similar hashtags with each video because that's where my audience is. Something additional to keep in mind is now that people have been utilizing TikTok as kind of a search engine to get answers to questions that they have. So adding a brief either introduction or description to your video that goes along with it is very important, so that your video will show up in search results on Google. And then also, I noticed recently that Google has been including not just the video section like they have done in the past where they have the YouTube videos, but they're also including now a section for short videos that relate to topics that people are searching. So that's definitely something to keep in mind in the future, and definitely something to look out for when you're posting videos on TikTok. As for my music choice, I always try to pick a song that's on trending on TikTok. I've always found that using the trending sounds gets your video out to a larger audience. I've also found that posting times have an effect. In your analytics, you can see when your audience is most active. And for me, that time is from 20 to 22 most days. However, Fridays are my best days to post because people start watching around 15 in the afternoon. So then you post to 15, and then you get a second wave of viewership that happens from 20 to 22. So Fridays are the best days. Additionally, posting location has an impact on viewership. In July, I was in the US visiting my friends and family, and I was posting to the Sarah Captio account and found that the audience changed and the viewership took a dip. So posting on another country with a different SIM card can have a lasting effect on your account. So it's important to be aware and utilize your SIM card from home when posting when abroad. For my channel especially, I did not post anything while I was visiting Boston because my viewership is mostly a Finnish audience. It's something like 80%. So I did not want to post on my US SIM card because while there, my TikTok app switched over to US, which was very tempting because I finally would have been able to get paid for my videos. However, the subject matter that I'm posting about would not relate so much to an American audience. So I abstained from posting on my personal account while I was in the US. And finally, after I post, I ignore that post that I made for at least a few hours. Typically, I ignore it for, let's say, 6 hours until the next morning. The reason that I do this is that because when I start commenting on the posts, it'll incite new engagement from the people who wrote that comment. And also the engagement showing on TikTok will invite others to come and watch it as well. So that is important to do. And then, yeah, while I am waiting on my video, I typically do not view it in the app, like I just said, until the next morning. However, I will view it in my web browser while not logged in. I have found that when you're posting a TikTok video, if you keep track of it and notice a ratio for your likes to views, as long as that ratio stays in a 10% ratio, then your video is likely to perform well. However, if your video dips below a 10% ratio of likes to views, then your video is likely to underperform. And then when I'm posting on TikTok, I also I also post to Instagram Reels simultaneously, and then also I schedule on YouTube for my videos as well. So the follow-up stage, once my video is posted, like I said, I ignore it for several hours or overnight, and then I log into the app and start responding to comments after the waiting period. The reason that I do this is that typically the views have begun to lag at this point. So by adding your responses to the people's comments that are bringing the, adding your response to people's comments, you're bringing that viewer back to the conversation, and then you're encouraging additional views from people who saw and commented. This activity on video, in my experience, it tends to spark a second wave of viewership and engagement on your posts. So now we will take a look at some of my best and least best performing videos, and then I can tell you what went wrong, maybe with the story, and you know, how to advance from there. But again, if a video does poorly on TikTok, it's a piece of micro content. It'll be forgotten in a couple days, so don't let it, you know, hinder your abilities to keep going, and don't let it be the focus. It's nothing. It's just forget about it. So these are my top performing videos so far. The common theme in all these videos is the mention of Finland, of course. In each of these videos, the term Finland or Finnish is either mentioned in the opening line of the video or has the text hard encoded throughout the video. For my analytics, I know that 88% of my following audience is located in Finland. And for the most part, this is also shown in the audience for each video. However, the last two videos that I have here, they're more recently created, so my audience has expanded a little bit. However, my audience is still getting, or my videos are still mostly getting a Finnish audience for the majority. So each of these videos presents something relatable to my audience and introduces a new concept to my audience. They're able to see things from my perspective via the story, and in instances like the tap water video, the one furthest to the right, I'm able to discuss water quality in the US, which may be a possible topic in Finland that people are unaware of. So something additional with the two videos that are all the way to the right, the kids in the US versus Finland, and the Hina 24/7 video. So after posting these videos on TikTok, I repurposed them for Instagram Reels, and the kids in the US video received 5.6 million views, and the Hina 24/7 video received 1.6 million views. So I highly recommend growing your audience on other apps in conjunction with TikTok, because you're reaching a totally different audience there, as I've noticed from some of my demographics and my age metrics. So definitely do that if you want to expand your audience. So here are some of my worst performing videos. So what went wrong with these? The content I figured out was not relatable to my audience. The first videos you see here on my left, I introduced a topic that I'm interested into. And as I said earlier, you need to make videos that your viewers will be interested in. So at this point, I had already had my channel for several videos that had performed nicely. And at this point, I decided to kind of incorporate my own hobbies into my videos, which, as you can see, did not go over well. I'm interested in craft beer, so I decided to do a 5-part series where I would go over my top 5 craft breweries in Finland, thinking that tying it loosely to the Finnish topic would be able to perform well like my other videos did. However, that was not the case. The nice thing with TikTok, though, is that you can post a video, have it perform badly, and bounce right back with the next one. So unfortunately, with this one, I did it 5 times, and I really wanted to finish the series just to see if maybe the #1 choice broke out and did it, but it did not. So do not be afraid to take risks, especially if you're speaking on a topic you're passionate about. You may be surprised with the results, but in this instance, I learned from my results that not to make videos about craft beer. But I can still sneak in mentions in my video, or I wear brewery t-shirts, or I kind of maybe leave cans out in the background to just show my interest. So the next video that you'll see in this list, the COVID test video, this video made absolutely no mention of Finland or any sort of thing that related to my theme. It was a video parody of the TV show That 70s Show, which I honestly don't even know if it was popular in Finland. And in it, I also try to sing, which I can't really do. But in this video, I ignored my audience. I tried to make the video I wanted to, and it was a challenge to film. I did maybe 8 different green screen performances, like with myself, and then had to put them all together in a car. And however, this video, it did not do well, but it's one of the videos I'm most proud of, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. And, you know, I invite everybody to take risks every now and then with your channels as well. This finished places video, I thought people might enjoy. However, that was not the case. This is the only video on my channel so far that I filmed that I am not personally in. So I kind of think that that might have something to do with it. My audience has gotten used to seeing myself in the video. So that has become part of my brand. And by not including myself in the initial first minutes of this video, people may have not known that this was attributed to my account and then skipped over it, even though my girlfriend's in it and she's a lovely person. So it was unfortunate, but that's how it went. And so, and then in the last video, I tried to essentially, I was making chicken katsu, which is a Hawaiian recipe. And I thought maybe people in Finland might be interested in seeing some international recipes, because when I was studying at University of Oulu, I was a marketing intern there, and we did a couple Instagram stories with our international team, and some of the recipe stories did very well. And I thought that maybe I would have the same positive experience, but that was not the case. So obviously this was another dramatic shift from my other videos, and it was widely skipped as it probably alienated my audience. So here's some takeaways for you that I'm hoping that my presentation here will give you. So for your channel, have a theme. You can tell infinite stories about, maybe not infinite, but pick a topic that you're knowledgeable on and research how others are approaching this topic, and then turn that concept on its head and make it your own. Some topics have a very crowded space, such as work life. This is the space I was operating in when I was making TikToks for Sarah Captio. And I found that the takeoff for a lot of videos was very slow, as the competition for that topic is very high. But if you find your niche and you keep at it, people will find you and they will follow you and they will appreciate what you do. Film and edit your stories outside of the TikTok app. This is going to make posting to Instagram, YouTube a breeze. And then you'll reach different demographics by being on other platforms. Filming in TikTok app will leave a watermark on your video, and it's going to kill your views in other platforms. So definitely recommend filming in other apps. And then consider your phrasing in your description for your TikToks. As it's growing as a search engine, it surprises me, but people really are using TikTok as a search engine. I guess it's not so surprising because I use typically Reddit as a search engine, because I want to hear viewpoints from real people and not, you know, Amazon reviews where I don't know if somebody else has reviewed a product or something that I'm interested in, with the basis that it's sponsored or something. So with TikTok, people are searching for that authenticity, and you have to keep that in mind when you're writing your descriptions, so that you can better have exposure for your account when it shows up in Google search results. Another point is to wait until the views start slowing down on your video to respond to comments. Doing so is going to cause an extra bump in engagement, or an extra bump in views due to the engagement that you're providing and the viewers who are coming back to your video are providing. And then lastly, originality is well received on these applications. It's easy to follow trends, and it's always good to mix in some ideas when you have a good spin on the concept of your trend. But I challenge everyone out there to go and create original content based on your own experiences, humor. Instead of following a trend, I will invite everyone to be the trend. You know, be the trend that goes viral rather than following it. And I hope my presentation has been informative for everyone. If you have any questions based on any of the topics that I've written about, please ask them here, or contact me personally if we don't get to every question by the end of it. And I appreciate everybody for watching, and invite everyone to go out there and start up a TikTok channel. So thanks again, and open it for questions now.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. I have a question, like, how do you stay motivated to continue bringing content forward? Like, when your videos are not performing well, of course, you get attached to them. So what would you recommend for people that are not performing so well? How do you stay motivated to continue that?
So motivation is definitely a factor here. If you have videos that are not doing well, it can be very, very demotivating. I just recommend you stay at it. Make videos that you enjoy doing. Make this a part of your life. If you're interested in doing it, don't force it if you don't enjoy doing it. But if you really enjoy doing it, that's the best way to stay motivated. I always tell people that my payoff is that I want to get to a notoriety that I get invited to the Independence Day handshaking ceremony here in Finland. Like, I want to have something that motivates you, have something in place that you're reaching for, whether that be a certain number of followers, a certain number of views, and just make the videos to have fun, and be up for the challenge of trying to go from script to from concept to filming. And it's a lot of fun to do the green screens and everything. Just give it a try.
Yeah, thank you. And then, of course, there's the other side. Now you're creating your videos. Maybe you've gone viral. You have a big following. So what about the content? Do you repurpose content? Is there any value in doing this? Like, how do you make sure that it remains original?
So the cool thing about TikTok, or really any like social media app where people are viewing these short videos, is you have an ever evolving and ever expanding audience. So when I first started with my TikTok, I did not have the audience that I have now. So there are a lot of people that are following me who are not aware of some of my previous videos. So recently, as ideas have become a bit more difficult, because you post for almost close to a year, you start running out of ideas. But the way I repurpose, I'll take one of the concepts from a previous video, one I did early on, and then I will reformat it and give it updated information, and just give it a new life. My girlfriend, she also runs the Mauri and Cucumbers channel, which is a cat that has over 500,000 followers here in Finland, or globally on TikTok. And another way that she repurposes content, I don't do it in this method because I don't have the footage, but she'll use old video footage and give it a new storyline. So if you have that older footage, you can always repurpose it and just give it a new life in a new video format. There's plenty of TikTokers out there that are doing it, and just repurpose it for your common theme.
Okay, thank you. I think we can open now the floor for people in the comments. Em, would you like to read them out for Dennis?
Sure. So first, I had a little comment. I agree. Craft beer culture in Finland is not a big thing. And most of the discussion that does happens in Facebook groups in Finnish, I've found, because I'm a big craft beer person too. But our questions are, which apps did you recommend for editing, if not the TikTok app? Do you have experience in driving TikTok audience to other platforms for marketing purposes? And we'll start there, and then we can keep going because we have some long
Sure.
After.
Yeah. So I recommend, it's an app. It's a phone app called InShot. They have a free version that you don't have to pay for, where you can edit your video, your audio. It's really great app. It's a lot like the TikTok app for video editing. I highly recommend doing that. And then you can add your song there, so you can match everything up before you add it to TikTok. And then also I recommend, it's a bit expensive, Adobe Premiere. So if you have access to the Adobe suite, that's an awesome video editing app that you can utilize. Yep.
Okay. Can you share links to those maybe in the questions feed after? Perfect. Thanks.
Sure.
And
then the
do you have
other question.
Yeah.
So
do you have
experience
experience-
driving TikTok audience to another platform for marketing purposes. I do not have so much experience driving from TikTok to another platform. However, I guess technically I have experience doing that. I with Sarah Captio, we had been doing a lot of employer branding kind of things on TikTok, where it was kind of, I did videos where we were talking about remote work. So a couple of videos were like 3 excuses so you can work from home again, because we were a fully remote company. So the purpose of those videos, I always was trying to lead people over to our careers page. So it was always trying to make it seem like our company was, having this great time, and I want everybody to have a great time with us. Visit our careers page so you can be part of the party. I did this more, I'd say, on Instagram, because Instagram, you can add more text than on TikTok. So on Instagram, I would always tell people, come visit our Linktree page and find our careers page there. The thing with our TikTok page is we didn't have enough followers yet that we had a link in our profile. So eventually we were going to get there, but maybe they'll do it now eventually if they can grow the channel. But in particular, I have more experience driving people from, say, LinkedIn to our TikTok by posting on LinkedIn to try and drive our branding in both directions. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so sorry, I'm reading the next question.
Yeah.
Language barrier. So language barrier is a big thing. I do not speak Finnish. En puhu suomea. I'm trying to learn, of course, and in some of my videos, I do Finnish speaking in moderation, where I find words that I think are funny, like translations, like laundry boys for clothespins, like pukipoja or pukipoika. But I haven't had much difficulty building my channel by primarily speaking in English. Here in Finland, we're all lucky that 72% of the population is native English or speaks English, so we're very lucky in that respect. And I don't believe it has an impact on performance, but I'm sure there is an audience that would prefer their content in Finnish. I think that putting my videos in English opens my viewership up to a wider audience than putting it in Finnish. So that's primarily, if I was speaking Finnish, I would still probably put my videos in English to try and get that wider audience. So hopefully that answers your question, Caitlin. So Siru, you asked about posting content that interests viewers rather than just your own interests. So when you started, how did you know? So I did not know what kind of content that my viewers would like at all when I first started. I basically found myself, I used to go on this one subreddit called Solo or I Want Out. And it was basically a subreddit of people that were looking to emigrate from their country and move to a new place. So I had visited Finland back in 2015. I was enamored with the country. I wanted to move there. So I relied heavily on this subreddit for information on how to move, like all the general things that I needed to put in place in order to come here to do my master's studies. So it was kind of a whim that I selected that as my topic of choice. I was actively participating in Reddit and helping other people with these questions, like once I had figured them out for myself. And I thought that maybe, just maybe, people would be interested in this as a topic. And then as I got more involved with TikTok, I saw that there were other Americans in Finland that were doing similar content, and it just kind of evolved from there. It expanded on my content and started doing more things that were like based on quirks that I saw in everyday life of an American in Finland. But yeah, I did say, like, think about your audience, but if you want to start a channel, start it on any topic you want. Do not let your audience decide, if you're passionate about something, just do it. You'll find your audience and your audience will find you eventually. And don't let it get you down if they don't find you really quick, because it doesn't always happen. It can be a slow slog to get from, 10 views to 100,000 views. You'll get there though eventually if you keep at it and people see that you're passionate about it. So some high performing videos on TikTok, some of them related to Finland, some not. I would like to reach more audience of Finland. Relevant hashtags. So for hashtags for Finland, I just typically use hashtag Finland, hashtag Suomi. And it's worked for me. You could use those two hashtags. There's also a couple others like Nordic humor. There's an ever-ending supply of hashtags out there, though. I would just recommend to try out a different one for each video based on what the topic is. If one video performs better than the other, then you could start utilizing that hashtag in more of your videos. If you find that it's working for you. How do you think poets and writers can leverage Instagram and LinkedIn? So I think that it's definitely a good place to be. It'll help expand your skills beyond just writing. So you'll, adapt and figure out some filming skills as well based off what you're writing. I guess it just comes down to your own style, how your poetry is or how your writing is and how you want to develop that into a visual style. You can do, videos where there's no point of person, no reference, just kind of background videos, kind of like stock video footage with your text and maybe a voiceover. You can act it out if you want. There's just a never-ending way to do it. And I'd highly recommend just trying out different variations of it and seeing what works with your viewership, and then going from there. You'll eventually find something that works for you, and then you can keep with it. Video editing tool besides InShot, CapCut. Yes, CapCut is another one. I can provide links to everybody for these ones as well. Thank you, Daniel, for providing that. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to leave them. Otherwise, I will give the microphone back to Maria for the next presentation.
Yes, so if no one else has any questions, of course, you can still write them, and then after Olivia's presentation, we can come back to these. But if not, then we can move on to Olivia, and she can tell us about her approach to storytelling for video marketing. Are you ready, Olivia? Oh, 1 minute. Perfect. Well, any last minute questions? Well, I could ask actually, have you used the famed For You page hashtag on TikTok? I feel like that's the one most people use.
Yes, there's 3 hashtags I almost always include in my videos. It's hashtag For You, hashtag FYP, and hashtag For You page. So it's like I had said, a lot of things on TikTok are kind of superstition, and that's one of my superstitions, is that I always include those hashtags, even though I've heard like once you grow an audience, you really don't need to, but I always do. And also something to bear in mind with TikTok is the algorithm is constantly changing, and something that you had that was working before might just change overnight and not work anymore. Something that used to be on TikTok, like it used to send your videos out to a wider audience. It used to send it immediately to the For You page once you posted it. However, they've changed the algorithm a bit now so that when you post the video, initially it gets sent out to your followers. And once your followers have liked and kind of given your video that validation, then it goes out to a wider audience. So once you do get a following, it's important to make sure your following is happy with your videos if you're trying to reach a wider audience.
Yeah. Do you believe in the shadow banning superstition as well?
I've personally, I think I've been a victim of the shadow banning. I don't know if it's in existence, but there was a TikTok video I had made where it was essentially like showing someone who was working remote meeting like their colleagues for the first time. So it's like, oh, you don't realize how tall all your colleagues are. when you're all at eye level working remote until you actually see them in person. So I did a video like that, and like there's a small person and a really tall person, and apparently the lineup of the person's head
Oh
to
no.
the person's body got the video kind of shadow banned. So I think that video ended up with like 14 views. So
okay, yeah, it's always interesting to see all the behavior of TikTok because no one really understands it. So you just have to do your best to get ahead. But seems like
exactly.
Olivia is back. Okay,
Yes.
then
That's
thank you
right.
so much, Dennis, and thanks for answering
Thank
my
you.
random questions. But
Yeah,
now we
thanks
can
for
move
the
on
question.
to Olivia.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. So making sure that my presentation is working. All right. So hello, everybody. I'm Olivia. I've been working in marketing for about a decade now. I've worked with quite large brands like Harley Davidson or Audion Group, which probably in Finland is most known as the parent company to Finkino, until AMC bought them out. I've done a wide variety of works inside the marketing industry. I started off as a graphic designer, moved on to project management, art direction, and eventually became a marketing director in my own startup. Today, I'm going to talk about storytelling for video marketing specifically, and more from the perspective of traditional commercials and TV and digital marketing in general. This is my approach to it, tools I've picked up from other people throughout the years, and it works very well for me. But I think that there are so many genres and styles how to achieve marketing goals. And so I don't think there's ever this one right way to do it. I hope that maybe my approach will help inspire some of you or give you ideas how to embellish or bolster your skills and find maybe some new tips or remind you of some old ones that maybe have kind of been forgotten over the years. So the first thing, why we tell stories. And here I want to use an example, which is a very well-known nursery rhyme, Mary Had a Little Lamb. Most of us have probably at least heard of it, know the name of it, or have some sort of association. Whether you heard it maybe 30 years ago or 10 years ago, or maybe you're hearing it for the first time. It is a story that really has few key points that usually people will remember, and that they are largely in the name. It's the key character, Mary, who has a lamb, and those are the two main things that people usually know, and there is a lot of very soft and gentle friendship between them. Mary loves her lamb, and the lamb loves Mary. And even though the story is 2 paragraphs, there's teacher, there's other students, there's a school, and there's a whole dialogue that goes on. In reality, we usually just remember those 3 things, those 2 characters and the emotion between them, because that's easy to remember, easy to relate to. And those are the key takeaways from a story like that. Because at the end of the day, that story was written with a very simple focus. It's a story that is both informational, educational for children, but also entertaining. And those things tend to be quite important in general in most storytelling that we find nowadays. In many ways, it was also very specifically targeted to children, because children would be told the story before bedtime, or maybe when they made a new friend, or maybe they had a moment of hurt of some kind. And that story would return to them and become this sort of solace, this thing to focus on when maybe other things that they didn't like as much were going on in their life. And with that in mind, when creating a story like Mary Had a Little Lamb, it becomes quite an integral part of the audience's experience when interacting with the story, and the emotion that they both have while hearing the story, but also that they get from hearing the story. And eventually, that nursery rhyme, as years moved on and nursery rhymes became less popular and songs became more of the thing to tell children, it was turned into a song. and that became the version that is most popular now. Now, when we think of a story like Mary Had a Little Lamb, it was very much targeted for children. It's a very old story, very simple. But those principles can easily be brought back to video commercials. Those same key takeaways can be used when making a commercial and essentially have the similar effect. And so when we compare the story to any commercial that you want to make, there are a few key things that you have to follow. There has to be Mary, which in your case will be the client that you do the video for. Whether the client wants to be a brand, a specific product, maybe a location, whatever they choose to be, that they want their viewers to identify this commercial by, it has to be very clear and easy to remember. The second thing has to be the product or service that they're offering, because at the end of the day, most video commercials will in some way touch on those. And once you have those two things very well done and very memorable, the overall storyline that happens in the video will only help create context for those two things, which are key things usually in most briefs as well when you meet with the client for the first time. And then comes, in my opinion, the glue, the thing that actually makes a commercial successful, which is the emotional connection. How do you take the brand, the client's name, and the product that they're offering and make it so that the viewer has some sort of emotional connection with them? Well, it can sometimes be quite easy. If it's a big budget commercial, you can put a lot of story, a lot of B-roll, a lot of emotion into the thing before you reach the actual part of the product or the offer. However, when you have something, let's say a supermarket offer for cheese, half off, it's quite hard to take a lot of time to build up an emotion, this like connection to this cheese and the supermarket. So what do? You might use something like a B-roll video of a food item like a pizza, freshly out of the oven, having a lot of that cheese pull, and that could create that emotional connection, because most of us will have some sort of memory about food that we've eaten. And once we have that memory, we suddenly remember that, and then cheese half off becomes I think I'm wanting to make some pizza, I'll go get that cheese. And that's where you create that small, very subtle, but very important emotional connection, without which the commercial is just a very boring and informative piece of video. And so the key takeaways that Mary Had a Little Lamb had in your video commercial have to be those things that usually your client gives you, whether it's a price, a date of an event, location, value, whatever it is. Those are the things that you have to make sure that when the emotion is happening, they are associated, because that's what makes a successful commercial. Of course, in every marketing campaign that you ever make, customer profile is key. You have to have that essential target audience. You have to know who you're talking to so that you know which emotion you're creating, how you're creating, what kind of references you're using, so that you're speaking to the right person at the right time with the right words, essentially. And then the final point, visual appeal, is very vague, very sort of used a lot. But in this case, it's important because most of the commercials that are made in a marketing campaign, the campaign doesn't start with the commercial. Usually there's a lot of work. The visuals are already created, the logos, the branding, the slogans, everything is ready. And then you have to turn that into a commercial to support the campaign in general. And so picking and choosing and understanding how to use elements that are already there and putting them together can be quite crucial in this step. And then understanding which of those elements will mostly attribute to the client, which will mostly attribute to the product, and which will mostly attribute to the emotion. And then putting them into a very well-flowing, streamlined video to make sure that the end product has the right story, that you start with the right subject, you show the right emotion, and you eventually come to a conclusion that leaves the viewer with the right information, the right data, so that their memory has the right connections for whenever they make a decision about a purchase or whatever the goal of the commercial is. So that's essentially the theory. However, in practice, it can be quite difficult, and there are multiple ways to tell a story in a video. The obvious things are using voiceover that very clearly communicates what you're trying to say. You might put text over a video to communicate specific data, and that's always very clear. It jumps out. It makes the viewer know right away what's going on. However, whatever video commercial you make, it's important that if you strip all of that very obvious information away, the video itself should still be good enough that the client gets the right information and the right understanding of what's going on. And most of all, the right emotion. So I'm going to show one of my commercials that I've made that I've removed all voiceover and text from, and just to essentially show how a brief where I had to make sure that there were a few key points in the video shown. It has to be instructional. Client has to understand how the product works from watching the video. It has to give off the right understanding of what the sort of like benefits of the product are. And it has to show a person. They wanted to make sure that it feels personable. And so I'm going to play the video. It's very short. And then I'll go over some of those points and talk about them more. All right, so the brief that I had to involve informative content. It had to show step by step how the product works. And so my job in that case was coming up with a story, how to make it very streamlined, very smooth, and make it personable. Something that people could relate to. When they watch, they understand what's going on. And so those steps were shown, how the product is made. The person to make it seem like people who are watching might identify or feel connection to a person who's using a product. And the overall emotion had to very much be consistent throughout. It had a little bit of energy, but the most of it had to be quite soft and quite home feeling. One of the reasons why making a video where you have, without any text or anything, to make sure that people want to watch it is because when you show a commercial, especially a traditional commercial on TV, it comes on at a time when the person, the viewer, does not want to see it. It is usually between a show or a movie that they're already watching. And the commercial break is for going to the bathroom, getting a drink, or getting some food. They do not want to watch the commercials. So you have a very little amount of attention from them. And so the first few things that you should always be showing are things like the emotion, that they get the vibe of the overall commercial, what it's going to be about and what it's going to feel like, and the subject matter. And in this case, the product, the logo, everything is in the focus right away. Because if nothing else, if people on average might watch it for 6 seconds and then get up and walk away, they might still remember that emotion that they got at the beginning, that it was the nice, right kind of emotion for them. And at the end of the day, you can't speak to everybody. You're going to have to make some choices and choose which audience you're targeting. And so maybe that target audience might relate to that first 6 seconds of what they're watching. And in Finland, it's not as common, but in many of the European countries, a lot of the TV commercial, like small time slot, is actually 6 seconds. So sometimes that's all you have to like essentially tell everything you need to tell to your viewer. And that's why making sure that what you need them to remember is very clear, very easy to remember, and has the right kind of atmosphere for it might be enough to just have that little remembrance. And maybe next time they see a little different part of that commercial and they start to put that story together on their own, just off of those like snippets that they get. But if the consistent emotion is there, then they will start to like understand what's going on. And they might recognize it even if the shot is different. And at the end of the day, you will have to make compromises, because whether it's the time slot, maybe the requirements from the TV station that the commercial is played on, the client side, whether they're branding or they're maybe already have some sort of idea that they want to be shown. And so when you make a commercial, at the end of the day, those compromises will dictate a lot of your choices and how you actually eventually tell the story. And that's where we come to the limitations. It does not want to go there. Limitations in marketing. In my experience, when I was a young, early marketing person, I liked reading all the like different ideas. I watched all the big marketing projects. You know, Coca-Cola did a big thing, and it gave me this idea that marketing is very interesting. Like every project is going to be about making something that nobody has ever done. It's going to be unique. You're going to be able to do all the creative things. It's exciting, everything about that. And then I went into my first brief meeting, and the first thing was the branding guidelines. The colors were chosen, the fonts were chosen, the slogans were chosen. Everything was already there. All you had to do was put it together. And I realized, oh, so it's not going to be that what I expected. Because marketing, while there is a very key element of having something visual, something that sort of speaks to your audience, it's also about numbers. There's analytics that make something that is tested safe, and clients will gravitate towards that because that's consistency. That's what produces the results that they're looking for. And so you start to fall into those patterns. You see what works, you use it, even though those patterns could be subjective based on the target audience, based on your client, based on your own sort of like perception of what the market is doing. And so eventually you fall into this quite a monotonous work routine where you get a project, you look, okay, these are all the things that I can't do, these are the things I can do, and slowly you start to forget the very creative, the unique, the exciting things that you once wanted to do. And that can be quite dangerous, because even though, yes, you have to do things that are, so to speak, within the box, something that you know will work, because especially in traditional video commercials, they are very expensive. They're both expensive to shoot. The time slots are very expensive. You can't really take too many risks. It is very rare that you get a client who's like, okay, we want something completely out there. Usually those are only alcohol brands, and they still have a lot of limitations just from law. So you eventually get into this cycle of, okay, I'm going to produce another commercial. It's going to be the same things. It's going to have the expected music, the expected slogans, the expected sort of like setup and structure. But when you fall into that, very quickly it can happen that eventually those clients realize, well, it doesn't work anymore. It seems that viewers are finding it boring. They're not engaging with the content as much. And that's when you start to suddenly realize, but I've been doing this and it worked. And it's hard to get back into that sort of innovation, that pushing the limits when you are so restricted by it. And so we come to what I believe is one of the most important parts of doing this work, finding your own story. Because you are the person who's working with this project, who is creating it, and who is telling that story to however many viewers there are that the client has. It's important that you, foremost, will connect to that story. And there are a few ways to do that. I found a couple of ways how to make sort of that whole process more appealing to myself so that I can put passion into it, that then translate to the viewer as something to relate to. And the first thing is characters you love. It can be very different things. I used to have a coworker who really loved wolves in every kind, cute wolves, scary wolves, realistic wolves, fantasy wolves, all of that. And whenever we had a project that could in some way feature a wolf, he would try to put that in there. It didn't have to be important. It didn't have to be the focus. But if there was any choice of animal to choose, you always chose a wolf. That was his way of putting something in there that he cared about. For me, it's characters of mystery. I grew up reading books like Sherlock Holmes and those types of characters that create question marks and make you interested in knowing more just always appealed to me. And so when I'd make a commercial that didn't actually have any dialogue, but it had 4 different characters, I would make one of them just slightly more interesting, slightly more mysterious, so that the viewer might have a question mark at the end. Maybe they might think about that character specifically and think, I wonder. And that was my way of creating some sort of like connection to the project that I liked, that made me excited, that made me go, I wonder how people will react to that. It didn't really change the overall brief. It didn't change the story much, but it gave me something. It changed the story that I was telling in that commercial. And that made it easier to produce commercials that are otherwise run-of-the-mill, maybe sometimes even just a seasonal commercial that comes back around every year. But I just had this little bit of element in there that made it more interesting for me. The other way that's even more subtle is visual references. Maybe you have a painting that you really love. You take a few of the colors from that painting to create a scene in your commercial. Or maybe you just use the composition or the angle, even though it's different subject, different like visuals, but you know that you put that reference in there. And when you watch the commercial, it'll remind you of something that you really like, something you find interesting, that you're passionate about. Because when you do that, the end result tends to be more human. It has that relatability that people will understand that it wasn't just random. Even if the color scheme is maybe very generic, but there are like those few things that just make it stand out. And for you, it's much easier to then go to a new project, and maybe you then get that client who's like, okay, we're not sure what we need to do. You come up with something. Then you already have those elements that you've been using, and then you have more room to experiment, more room to bring in interesting characters, more room to use references from other mediums and make something that's actually unique and creative. Because at the start of the presentation, I talked about how important it is to create an emotional connection for the viewer, to make the viewer empathize with whatever is going on in that video, because that's what makes them interested in the commercial. But first, before you do that, you have to create that emotional connection between yourself and the project. You have to know what your connection to it is, because if you have no connection to it, it's very hard to know if the connection is going to happen with a viewer. Because our easiest way to test something is to watch it ourselves first, because we're all human. We all have experiences. And while they're all not the same, there are certain experiences that are quite universal, or at least widely known. And so you might find that emotional connection in one of those 2 elements, maybe a character you put in there, a visual reference, or maybe it's something even smaller. Maybe it's the product, you find something that you like about it, a memory, something that connects you to that. Sometimes it's the brand, sometimes it's one of the words in a slogan that you really like. And you start to build those connections, and that makes you more interested. And usually the clients can tell. If you go into a briefing and you talk about the commercial idea and you tell them, okay, I think it's a generic idea. However, I feel like these are the things that we can do to make it a little more exciting. The clients will be more inclined to do what you're offering if they see that you really believe it, that you find passion in it, and that you like it, because it's very hard to sell something that you don't like. And so the final tool that I've used, that I actually got recommended by a mentor of mine many, many years ago, is passion projects. Now, obviously, all of us have passion projects. We do things on our own time. If you like doing anything artistic, whether it's writing, drawing, dance, music, all of that is very interesting to do. When you have a project, a client brings you a very vague brief and they ask you to propose something, and you get that idea, that creative idea, that unique idea that you think, oh, this might be the one that, you know, goes out and people will talk about it and it will win awards. And then you put the proposal together, you have a very clear vision. And at that meeting, the client is like, oh, it's too out there. We need something more traditional. And you sort of shelve that. Sometimes you should take that and in your own time, take it to whatever lengths you want to take. Complete that project on your own for yourself, because it's not so much about the end result being maybe the most effective commercial. It's about that spark, that creativity that you have, that you don't always suppress that. Because if you always only suppress all those creative ideas because you learn that they don't work, then eventually one day you're going to get that client, that really good client, who's going to ask, okay, I need you to do something very interesting. And then you've forgotten how to do that because you're expecting, well, what's the brief? What's the box? What am I putting this into? And you're unable to go out of it. The other thing is you might finish that project, you might show it to the client, and they might think, oh, that is actually very interesting once you've finished it, because a lot of clients are unable to understand the idea just based off of your description. And next time, they might listen to you. They might go, okay, let's try your idea, because it seems that you do have good ideas. Or you might just put it in your portfolio, and the next client will be like, oh, this is exactly what we're looking for in our style. And you will find those clients that actually want what you're doing. And eventually, when you do enough of those projects, you're going to get the confidence. You'll know what works, what doesn't work, and you'll be able to incorporate, maybe in smaller size, those elements from those really creative ideas and put them in there and create even better commercials that are very standard, but have that uniqueness to them that very, very big clients will want. And to bring it all together, I put a quote from an author, my favorite author, Neil Gaiman, who is a storyteller that inspired me to tell stories, not just in marketing, but in general. And he says, the world always seems brighter when you've just made something that wasn't there before. And so when you make a commercial and you think of those key things, the characters, the emotion, and you put that little thing in there that you tell a story, maybe nobody else really notices, but you notice, maybe few other people notice. But just that little bit could sometimes make the difference between just a general commercial and something that's truly unique that actually speaks to people. Thank you very much. If anybody has questions, I think now is a good time to start with those.
Yes, thank you, Olivia. Actually, I have a question because we're talking about video marketing specifically for like TV and for products and services. So how do you make boring data interesting in the story? How do you connect that to the emotions? Because of course we have pricing, location, value of a brand. How do we make sure that we keep the audience engaged even though they have to see like numbers and random words?
Yeah, absolutely. It is probably one of the most complicated things to solve. What I've found is that context is the most important thing there. And that's why you'll find that commercials will use continuation throughout other commercials. So if you have a client that maybe produces very short, very basic commercials, like a supermarket that's just advertising a product and a price, the price itself will never be appealing in itself. Creating that emotional connection just in that might not work, but maybe it's the song that the commercial starts with, or a little bit of B-roll that's always there, something that people will associate it with. Maybe it's an animal, a person, which is a very common thing to put a person in there because that usually creates a connection, or a scene from something that might remind people of something that they will have at least some memory of. And then associating that piece of data with that scene so that when you're showing it, it's not just a large splash of a number, but rather maybe it's connected to a musical theme or a B-roll scene of something you love, like that earlier broad example of like a cheese pull in a pizza might make a cheese much more interesting, and that suddenly the 50% off has an association with the pizza, not just a number. And so using those context clues to make people associate the number with the other things, not just the brand, not just the product, will make them want it more.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And how about when you're discussing a brief for like a new ad that you're going to make and everything that you keep offering is rejected by the client? And that can be so frustrating. And then anything that you do is always bad and it's not what they want. How do you like maintain that emotional connection that makes you passionate about the project when you just keep getting shut down?
Yeah, it can be very difficult to find motivation to do good work, especially if the client is difficult, because you have that emotional connection that's negative at that point. So sometimes it's good to separate the people that you're working with from the project. So rather than thinking, okay, I'm making this commercial for them, who you're making this commercial for is the viewers. You want to tell that story to them. You don't actually care about the client's interaction with it other than making sure that it's effective, that it's reaching the goals that they have with this. And so allowing yourself to understand who you're talking to when you're putting something in there will allow you to put the right emotions in there. So rather than thinking that client representative just so difficult to work with, I don't like the sentence they gave me, you think, okay, well, I have this sentence, I have to use it. Now I have this target audience. How can I put that sentence in there so that it speaks to them? And you create that connection with the right sort of like line rather than focusing too much on the person that you're actually talking to or the barriers that you have based on the limitations of the brand, etc.
Yes, thank you. And I will ask one more question and then we can open the floor. Could you share a little bit like your most successful, your most interesting campaign that you have done with us since you have 10 years of experience
Mhm.
in this?
I think it might not be the most successful in terms of numbers, but this was probably about 4 years into my work in marketing agency. We had a client whose product was smoked meats, and it was a very small company. They were trying to do something in a very competitive market. And I remember when we talked with the owners, they had this idea for making a commercial that was very much run of the mill, exactly like all the other competitors. And we talked a lot about how can we stand out because they were going to be a new product on the market. And one of the things we found was even though most of the commercial, I would say, was pretty standard, it gave the viewers the same experience that they would expect from all the other big ones. What we put in there was a very sort of local, regional, old lady who sang a folk song from that region where they actually operate. It's a very small part of Estonia that most people will probably have heard of, but not really thought of. But that element in there suddenly changed everything because what started to happen was when they went into festivals, they started to bring that lady, but also other people to sing those songs. And that became kind of almost accidentally the main thing that they were known for. It was such a like small element, a character that most people don't really think about when they think of smoked meats, but it created the right kind of emotional connection for their target audience. And with that client, I think what was successful with them was that I didn't give up. I didn't just say, okay, let's do what works. I was like, but we have to find that one thing that's yours, that's going to make you stand out, that's going to make people want to buy your product. And I think that was very successful because proportionally, considering how small they were and how large, like they grew in within about 2 years was very, very well like shown through the fact that they found a unique thing that spoke to their target audience.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
I have a question. With kind of the I'm not sure if this was like covered, but how would you tie in like any type of like auditory cues to strengthen a brand, particularly in a like B2B capacity? Like, what is there any way to kind of, because if you watch a commercial for like a grocery store or for, I don't know, McDonald's, you'll hear it, it'll say like, I'm loving it, for McDonald's, or I mean, there are Finnish ones when I turn on the TV before I open my streaming services for the co-market or the S market. So I'm wondering, like, how would you tie in like an auditory cue for more of that B2B capacity?
Yeah, B2B is a very interesting sort of target audience for video commercials, because they usually don't find you from TV. They will find you from presentations or events such as like expos, conventions, and so on. And in those cases, video commercials are actually quite important. The main thing I've experienced, I've been to many expos with clients and had to have those things. For B2B clients, a lot of them usually either seek you out, or if they haven't seeked you out, they already kind of have some sort of reason to like you. Because in B2B, competition is different, and usually you only approach those businesses that you already know have the need for your service or product. So when you create like an audio cue or visual cue to essentially make them remember you, most often than not, that's more to do with a larger sort of like scene. You might create a scene that speaks to them about them. It could be quite a personal approach. So I can give an example. When I was working with a water company, we had a very like sort of quote unquote Nordic design for the product and the brand. And then we were trying to sell it to restaurants in China, which was a very different market, very different sort of idea. And their idea of what they consider Northern, that they really like, is actually very different from the reality. And so we had to create specific sort of visuals that were actually mostly Alps and a little bit of like South American mountaintops that they thought was the Northern sort of like brand. And we used a lot of those with our product to approach those clients that were large businesses that were looking for like Northern products. Whereas here we might show actual like images of, you know, maybe the fjords or just like places in Lapland, things that actually people will know and associate with the right things. So picking the right elements can sometimes be very different based on the business that you're approaching. And in B2B, most of the time, you have a little bit more of a sort of like easier time targeting for the audience, because usually you're not talking to, you know, millions at a time like a TV commercial would. Instead, you might talk to 100 or 1,000 businesses. Maybe it's a targeted email campaign. You kind of already know who you're talking to, and it makes it easier to pick those right kind of like visual and auditory cues to speak to them.
Cool. Thank you so much. That's super helpful.
Mhm.
Oh, I can go again. Which one, in your opinion, is more fun, B2C or B2B ads?
I think B2C is definitely where you can have more creative things. B2B is usually more informative, more streamlined. You have to kind of just get the information out there because you're not really catching the attention you're already trying to sell. Whereas with B2C, you'll have more of that attention grabbing. And that's where usually you can have a little bit of playroom. You might come up with those little creative ideas, those little like starting cold open, so to speak, to commercials that make you do something that maybe you had a joke in your mind that you get to use, or you saw something that you thought was very creative and you get to use it in a project of your own. So I would say that B2C is usually where you'll see more of the like interesting and more fun advertisement rather than B2B.
There's a message from Diana.
Yeah, right. Scripting is a very interesting thing. The main things that I usually consider when I get to the scripting part is first, the client brief. And that, for me at least, usually takes more than one meeting, because before scripting, you have to essentially already confirm a lot of the storyboards, a lot of the sort of general visuals before you get into the actual script of the commercial. The other thing that I usually think is, what's the client, like the target audience? Again, I believe most people who do marketing, they will know how to create a like your customer profile. So you have to have those already, because you have to think, okay, what are the references that I might put in there that speak to them? Demographically, you know, like what are the phrases, what are the sayings, what are the jokes that I can use to make it more personable for the right audience? Because you could completely lose somebody if you put a joke in there that just doesn't land, like in any case. And so for me, those are the two main things, because without those two, everything else falls apart. And then after you make sure that you're following the brief, that you have the like right customer profile, then you start to see what can you do within that to make it a little more interesting. You might read other books. Very often what I try to do to like avoid too similar like scripts is I might use the styles of different authors I like. So as I brought Neil Gaiman, he has a very unique style of writing dialogue. So sometimes I might use that, but not every time. Otherwise that becomes too much and people will like start to see that I just do one type. So I might use one of that, and then I might go to another author style of dialogue and slowly like incorporate different styles into it to make sure that it's always interesting, a little bit different, and that it fits what you're trying to sell. You can't get too like elaborate if you're just trying to have a 6-second commercial about a very simple product, versus if you have maybe a service that requires a bit more unique approach, then you might use a more complex dialogue style. I hope that answers that question. Then Daniel, where do you get your creativity from? There is a very, very interesting artist, Feng Zhu. He runs a school, a concept art school in Shanghai. He was a concept artist for the original Star Wars movies. He was one of the people that came up with those aliens that you've never seen before. And he has a very interesting philosophy about creativity. Creativity isn't coming up with something that doesn't exist. It's about having a very large library of reference in your mind and being able to use what is there and combine it in new ways, or ways that aren't commonly used. So his approach in visual style was, for example, when designing an alien, he might take a piece of a helicopter and a frying pan, put them together in a new way, and then just draw over it. And that was the alien that he created. And when you make a commercial, you might take elements that aren't usually combined in that way, but it makes that interesting new thing. And to me, that's what creativity is. It's not that I come up with something that nobody has ever done before. It's that I'm taking things that I've seen, things I've consumed, and then just putting them together in a different way. And that's usually what I do. And I find that it's like a muscle that you can train. I very purposefully sometimes watch commercials, not from the aspect of like how effective it is, but I'm trying to see what did they use in there? What are those elements that maybe I haven't used before that I find interesting? And then I just add that into my library. I also have a very extensive library of actual reference that I just pile. Like I see a cool commercial, I try to find it on YouTube, I put it in there so that when I have a project that might be a little bit difficult to come up with, I'll just go through that library and I'll refresh my memory on projects that could spark that creativity. So hopefully that helps you find your source of creativity as well. I believe that Jar Jar Binks was one of them. The specific like art that he did, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, so I don't know all of them, but I recommend he puts a lot of information out on YouTube as well, if you just like to learn about creativity in general. Well, creating a video ad, can we connect more humanity with consumer? Right, those are the most complicated ones, those 15-20-second videos where you have so little time. If you watch if you remember the video I showed you, the total running time of that video is about 50 seconds. The total like amount of time that a person is visible in the video is probably roughly about maybe 15 seconds. It's proportionally quite a little amount. The key thing is if you have very little amount of time to show a person in a video, make sure that what you're showing is the exact right facial expression, the right body language that gives the emotion that you're trying to give. Because if you think about it, if you see a person for 1 second and they're sad, most of us will be able to tell that they're sad, if they're happy, if they're angry. We are actually so expressive, and especially when you work with actors who are able to show emotions so well, that even if you have very little amount of time, making sure that that time is very clear in the like message that you're trying to say will help a lot and will go a long way, even if you only have maybe 2 or 3 seconds to show.
Yeah, thank you. I think we can start wrapping up now. We have around 3 minutes for the meeting ends. Maybe I can share my screen, or Olivia, could you hit next on your presentation so we can see the awesome marketer slide? That is possible. Yep. Okay. I will share. All right. Yes. So thank you, everyone, for coming up, and thank you so much to our speakers. I hope that everyone has been able to gain some insights, both for your personal brand as well as for the companies that you're working on. Our next event is going to be Content-Led SEO with Olga Adrienko, who is the VP of Brand of SEMrush. And if you like this event and you would like to hear more events from us, please join our Slack channel. You can find the link over here. We're already over 1,000 marketers strong, and we're always having great discussions and opportunities there. So yeah, make sure to join if you're interested in just developing your network and increasing your marketing skills. And thank you all so much for joining us, and have a great day.